Okay, guys. Again, thank you very much for accepting this invitation. It's a real honor and a pleasure to have you both. Okay. And before we continue, I'm gonna make a little introduction to each one of you. First we have Mr. Giles Peterson, who has been a champion of Latin music in the UK for a very long time. He's a DJ and broadcaster, record label owner. Internet radio pioneer and an all-round cool dude from North London. And also we have Mr. Dusko Justic, who is the Vice President for International Marketing and Partnership for the Latin Iberian region for Sony Music, right? So thank you very much and welcome to the Lola MC talk about Latin music and the mainstream. And that is basically what we'll be talking about today, which is a very interesting subject, especially now with music changing so rapidly and with the pandemic, with the lockdown, and things have been moving so fast in different directions. And you tell me if you wanna start with a little introduction what you're doing right now, and then we carry on.
Yeah. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. It's always nice to be able to talk about everyone's view of how it's going to work and how we're going to sort of, get into this new world that we're all facing. And for me, I was quite fortunate during lockdown that I could broadcast from my studio, which is a 3-minute walk from where I live. So every day I was coming across the park, Clissold Park in sort of Stoke Newington, Finsbury Park area, and I'd come and do a radio show every day for my Worldwide FM platform, and then at the weekend I'd be doing a 4-hour show from the BBC. And so that was really the whole, in fact I did 80 shows during lockdown, and so I was very busy thinking about that, which was really helpful for my mental health. But by the end of the 80 shows, which kind of took us past the Black Lives Matter period and into a sort of out of lockdown sort of transition sort of thing, then I sort of basically just thought, I can't do any more radio for a while. I need a break. So I ran off and saw my mum, who lives in continental Europe, in just on the border between France and Switzerland. And so I was, dying to see her because she's in a home, etc. So it was nice to sort of be able to at least see each other. And then I came back to England in my little bubble. And I've just been focusing the last sort of 8 weeks on really what's going on with the record label, which is Brownswood Records, finishing off a few records. And also just watching over Worldwide FM and just plotting the future and how we can kind of continue. So I've been very, very busy, it's been very interesting actually.
What about you, Dusko?
Yeah, I mean, it's been quite a ride. I mean, if you think about mainstream Latin music in the UK and in Europe in particular, the spring, it's always the perception is that it's a warmer sound, so we need the warmer weather for people to enjoy it. As you know, your festival is in the summertime, so we were always looking forward to the warmer weather in the UK and Europe, because for some strange reason people gravitated more towards Latin music in the warmer months. Whether it's listening to it on radio, we saw more radio plays on songs. Streaming, we saw more summer type of playlists with more Latin music on these playlists. And the two most important things that that we missed out on is the live aspect, is for artists to be over here to be performing in front of audiences, and for DJs to be playing our music, whether it's on the beach or in a club or an outdoor bar or whatever. So we lost out on all those opportunities. So what we've been focusing on is how do we reach those fans and reach that audience, whether it's through playlists, you know, just doing data deep dives and trying to figure out which other non-Latin music playlists that we can get songs into. You know, right now we have the second most streamed song on Spotify globally with Maluma, a song called Hawaii. You know, it's purely in Spanish, by a solo artist, and you know, trying to change the perception in people's mindsets that it's not just Latin music. It is great music. It's pop music. It should fit on a wine with friends type of playlist, to a chill out and pop music playlist. You know, it should be various types of playlists. So I've been really focused on how do we expose the music to the biggest audience possible, and then also how do we communicate with an audience that's either sitting at home in front of the laptops, or you know, with their mobile in front of them. So just trying to create compelling content to connect with an audience.
Okay, in my case, you know, my big question is how, you know, does Latin music reach different audiences in the UK? There is very few channels that artists in the UK, Latin artists based in the UK, which is why we created this conference, is for, can reach, you know, this radio. For example, in your case, Giles, I'm a producer, I'm a band leader, I have this jazz record, this, I don't know, whatever, rumba record or salsa record, and I want to get to your FM, to your playlist, to your program. What is the process that someone has to go to?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, from my point of view, I have a very complicated, I suppose, relationship with Latin music. To take it back to how it started for me was really, you know, how come I'm going to make a record with Daime Arocena, or what am I doing in Cuba? Doing a record with, you know, Roberto Fonseca or whatever. These are sort of experiences that happened to me in the last 10 years. And I suddenly found myself with a British record label, independent British record label, with a Spanish spoken album, trying to sell it in the UK. It's pretty much impossible, you know. I wish I knew you 10 years ago, Dusko, because I could have probably asked you for some sort of real big tips to get my records played in Mexico or other parts of the world that, you know. So we were really, it's very interesting. You know, I just have a relationship, from a business record label point of view. It's an interesting thing, and trying to break Latin music into the British media and to find those platforms that can support it, champion it, get it to a wide audience, and then hopefully it will get, obviously now it's a global market, and so you can put a music out and people will follow you in Uruguay, or they'll follow you in Venezuela or in Australia, hopefully, and discover your record. And then, but for it to get into the real core market, it's quite difficult because everyone's living in their own bubbles in a way, you know, music community bubbles. But, you know, just so that people understand as well, someone like me who doesn't speak Spanish or Portuguese, I speak French, and you know, that's my kind of background. Background is really actually hearing radio stations like Radio Nova in Paris, where you would hear African music and Latin music and pop music all thrown together. And that was in the 80s. And that really inspired me, because that wasn't really happening here in the UK. In the UK, the only place that I first got to hear Latin music was really Latin jazz, which I'd hear in their nightclubs. In the other room, you know, you'd go to a club and there'd be the pumping mainstream stuff in the main room, and then you'd maybe discover a little room behind the bar which had like 10 people in it, and a really like lonely DJ with a spliff in his mouth playing some sort of Tito Puente. And I was like, yeah, this is where I really got into you know, Latin music really as a young boy, you know, brought up in London. And it was, and then I slowly discovered a set of DJs here in the UK and promoters who would be playing more of this kind of music, so I could kind of just find out more and discover more about this sort of curiosity in music. So people like Sue Stewart and DJs like Dominique and DJs like Tomek and people like Dave Hucker, they were really key people back in the late 80s, early 90s, because they were basically championing Latin jazz. And then from Latin jazz, which was really my entry point, I kind of slowly discovered salsa, and there was a record shop in London called Hitman Records, which was the only importer of salsa. So it was like Latin jazz, but with vocals. And I didn't really understand a lot of it, but it was really interesting again. And some of these songs would get into my playlist. So, you know, and so this music ended up being played by DJs like myself who were brought up in these clubs, in this club scene, but they were finding these back rooms. And I was talking earlier on to a DJ called Luby from Leeds, and he's been promoting Latin jazz and salsa in places like Leeds and Manchester and the north of England for like 30 years now. So there's been these people like Luby, and a new generation as well now, who are kind of just finding a way to be able to use club culture to play Latin influenced music, of which there are two types. You've got your house DJs who play it kind of subtly in their music, and then you've got the people who are more like authentic in the traditional sound, playing kind of like more pure timba, salsa, and that kind of music. So it's a very, in the UK, it's a small network, which is mixed. There's a mixture of either people who live here from Venezuela, from all the different parts, from Colombia and et cetera, who there's obviously the local communities. And they obviously are very powerful, very strong in being able to allow promoters to bring music in, because they'll obviously make up a big audience. But then you've also got this other side, which is more people who've kind of discovered Latin music through the clubs, and they might not be able to, so they have a different taste within it. So sometimes you can go to a concert and there'll be no English people there at all, and other times there'll be a famous Latin or Brazilian band and there'll be no Brazilians there, just English people, you know, who love this music because a certain DJ was playing it. So it's very complex. But fine, just to answer your question, I think that as someone who's running a record label and wants to get my new Daime Arocena record played, you just have to find out who the journalists are that like it. There aren't many, but there's a few. You need to find out who the DJs are, and you just got to make sure that you have those relationships to allow them to get the ball rolling. And that's grown in the last 5 years, I think.
In your case, Dusko, because you come from a completely different perspective, because Giles is very much a taste maker for that kind of world. But in your case, you're coming with the Malumas, the Ozunas, the big hitters of today's, you know, music market. Still, you don't get much of Maluma or Anuel, any of them in the media here. So how do you approach the same question?
You know what, and the perspective is pretty much the same. I mean, I have the same kind of mindset and approach as Giles would. I mean, so if you take from a mainstream point of view, if you take a step back and you look at the British music scene, I mean, it's massive. I mean, you've got some massive talent, you know, whether it's Adele, Ed Sheeran, Calvin Harris, and, you know, the list goes on and on. And then you have the US talent that gets imported, whether it's, you know, Beyonce, The Weeknd, Cardi B, and so on. So that's kind of already what I'm competing with. And then you also have a UK audience, like Giles said, it's very, very diverse. So, you know, they listen from A to Z. And then on top of that, music, you know, compared to 10, 15, 20 years ago, it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. Everyone has a computer in their pocket. Anyone can access any sort of music on any platform, from YouTube to Instagram to Twitter to Spotify to Apple Music, whatever it is. So people are just inundated. So for me, it's what's the starting point? And for me and my team, the starting point is the like Giles said, the core. Like, so who are the fans of Latin music? Who are the expats? Who are the Colombians that are living in Elephant and Castle? And, you know, reaching them first so that they can almost be our promotional partner to help us tell the story of great music, whether it's a Maluma or Ozuna. And then going beyond that through storytelling. Like I said earlier, you know, we just have to tell great stories. It's about perception, right? It's about how can we tell a great story on an artist through a music video or through a great piece of music or through a great media piece. And then it's working with storytellers. It's the DJs, it's the other labels, you know, it's people like Giles and like Luby and these media and these journalists. And the great thing about social media is there's a ton of people that have something special to say, and there's a ton of people listening to those people. So it's just finding those people that are passionate about music, creating those relationships, just like you would create a relationship with a DJ or a journalist, and get them to help us tell the story for a great piece of music. Even though you don't hear Maluma or Bad Bunny or Ozuna on the radio, they still come over and they sell anywhere between 7 and 10,000 tickets, and people are still streaming their music. I mean, you know, Hawaii is streamed, you know, Maluma's current single is streamed anywhere between 25 to 60,000 times per day here in the UK with no radio.
That's pretty amazing. And obviously there is something that, you know, keeps coming to us, is the whole reggaeton thing. You can, that's global pop these days. And it's interesting because I know Giles' catalog, the Latin part of it, you know, fairly well. And you had the Havana Cultura album, so you had a few reggaeton guys playing there. But then from all those people, you end up signing Daime Rosena, which is, you know, something completely different. And how can you then go for the obvious, the next Gente de Zona guys from Havana? That kind of like, whoa, what happened there? Or is it something that you were not interested?
I think that sort of those forms of music are better suited for really mainstream record labels that can really just get it out there big time. I think that from a record label point of view, I've got particular expertise in jazz and a more traditional world music, and so I think that for me to work with a Daime is a relationship thing where we're talking about songs, and she wanted this more traditional sort of, you know, way of approaching her music. So for me that was very exciting. Whereas electronic music, it's kind of something that I'm more likely to play in the clubs, but less likely to play on my record label, to release on my record label. So I was interested in all the sort of new music that I was hearing from the street and from the new waves. And of course, you know, a lot of the music, electronic music, which combines traditional aspects of Latin music with electronics, you know, whether that's, you know, labels like ZZK in Argentina, or, you know, people like the Meridian Brothers, all this kind of slightly bonkers La Redada in Mexico. There's so many groups that kind of fit into my aesthetic of how I play. A lot of it isn't really necessarily super commercial. Every now and again, you'll get one of those songs that actually crosses over. And I've always been into kind of just looking for that. That's really what I'm sensing, I'm looking out for. But of course, we'd all love to have one of those massive crossovers, because that would allow me to really go to town with Daime and really spend even more time on big records. But, you know, we're trying, and we're just sort of building. I just do what I feel that I'm comfortable doing with artists, that I can actually give them as much as they can give me in terms of, you know, my experience in the studio.
But it's interesting that you mentioned kind of that sound, because I remember having a conversation with Dusko, and he was telling me that he would love to have someone like Dengue Dengue, which is, you know, and it's like you have, you know, in a sense, what Dusko would like to have. You know, you have access to that market that maybe it's not that easy for Sony, such a big label, to have access to that kind of music these days. So it's interesting that how you, Dusko, are looking for what Giles has, in a sense, as a label. Something that I've been well, that's a big question in terms of big label, Dusko, is what is Sony looking for in an artist? Obviously, these days, social media plays such a key role that I'm not saying that this is the case with you guys, but the image and following and social media, you know, influence tend to be what labels are looking for in a way for artists, rather than the quality of the music. Is that something that, you know, there's a bit of of true in that, or it's just, or you're still looking for, okay, we're looking for the new sound, or we don't care about that? What's a big labels? If I'm an artist, I have a fairly decent following. What's the next step for me to get to Sony, for example?
I think, look, I mean, it's always about, and it always starts with the music, and it always has to be great music. And you know, Giles mentioned a word that resonated with me, and it resonates with many people within the company. It's authenticity. You know, like you said, I mean, yes, social media is important in this day and age, and in the building of an artist profile. But if there's a lack of authenticity, then there's a big challenge to go broader. You know, we're always looking for the great music, but the authenticity in an artist to help sell that story. Because at the end of the day, it starts with the artist, it starts with the music. We are here. What we do great is we amplify, and you know, you can't amplify something that's inauthentic.
Okay, and regarding the radio station that you founded, Giles, and that issue is a big platform now. How does it work in terms of Latin music? Is there a way where people can get there, you know, directly to a programmer? There's certain programs that are, you know, dedicated to Latin music, because that seems to be growing and growing and growing all the time, and which is great. And
Yeah.
that's a little bit, you know, no one, I don't think people saw that one coming, how fast it has grown, which is great.
Yeah. Well, the thing about Worldwide FM is I wanted to create a platform that would allow me to be able to invite people who I regarded as leaders onto a radio platform that would be able to, in a selfish way for me, allow me to listen to my favorite DJs play music, and you know, people that I've been able to meet around the world mainly, as well as of course a strong element of broadcasters from the UK, and also including room for new emerging talent to come through. So not just about the leaders and about the old heads, but also about, you know, a great place for sort of new people to come through and learn about, you know, broadcasting and the radio industry. And so for me, we don't really have yet an organization that's organized to the point of a Spotify or one of the more traditional radio stations where you have like a Latin expert. I'd love to have, you know, our playlists, you know, and just things that people could really go to or send music towards. Really, it's all directed to the actual presenters who use the platform to present good radio. So from a Latin point of view, and Brazilian and Argentinian, etc. We have a certain amount of DJs that I really value. So we have people like Cassin in Rio. We have Carlos Icaza in Mexico. We have someone like Coco Maria in Amsterdam. We have Papaul here in the UK. They're all kind of, I'd say they sort of have Latin as their base, and the foundation of the radio shows that they do. And that's kind of like where we're at the moment. We have shows from Venezuela. We have shows from obviously different parts of the world in Africa and all over Europe. And so, you know, it just seems to me like there's more and more, how can I say it? I just think that the way I look at it at Worldwide FM is that lots of different styles of music they sound better around different styles of music. So in a way, to play cumbia off the back of some, you know, Brazilian stuff, next to some jazz, next to some house and disco and electronic stuff, to me, that's the mixture that allows all these musics to breathe beautifully. And so I have a lot of broadcasters who tend to do that. And as a result, people will enter into some areas of music that they wouldn't necessarily have maybe come across. So, but if you're a young or old, whatever, a person who wants to get their music on Worldwide FM, I'd say the thing to do is to kind of tune in and find out which of the DJs are the ones that might well appreciate your music, and then you get in touch with them directly. And, you know, people have got a lot of time on their hands at the moment. The DJs ain't traveling very far. So I get the sense, certainly for me, you know, people send me stuff and it gets to me. You know, that's one of the great things about music today. You know, you know, maybe it's a bit of a pain in the ass. Sometimes you don't want to listen to, you know, 100 different sort of, you know, people's SoundClouds, but there are more days than there used to be that I'm actually very curious to listen to what people are sending me. And, you know, and out of that comes the moment when they get played on, you know, I'll play it on the BBC, you know, and you can go from your bedroom to the BBC in the space of a few minutes. And that is, you know, that's incredible.
Dusko, you have, last time we spoke, you were mentioning a playlist that you were working on. I think it was called Caliente or something. I can't remember.
Latino Caliente, yeah.
Latino Caliente, that's right. And that seems to be like the way things are going now. A lot of playlists in Spotify, you know, kind of creating your own thing within the market. Can you explain to me how that works? Because I believe you said you were investing time and resources into building that brand. Can you explain to me a bit?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, look, today's playlist is well, it's the mixtape of today, right? I mean, if you wanted, back in the day, I remember when I was in school, if you wanted to hear the hottest music of today, you went to the cool kid to make you a mixtape, and, you know, he or she put, you know, 10 or 12 songs onto a tape, and you took it home and you listened to it. And it was born out of that. And also, like you mentioned earlier, the lack of radio exposure. So, you know, with creating a third-party playlist on Spotify, we get to expose music, not just our music, but music from other labels to tons of people. I mean, we've managed to grow the playlist to just under 650,000 followers. And we want to grow it even further, and to grow it, obviously we keep feeding it with music, and we refresh it with new music on a weekly basis, and we pay attention to how people are reacting and engaging to the music, but also creating, just like any radio station or any brand for that matter would market and promote their brand. We create social assets and tools that digital tools that we share online, and to drive people back to that playlist.
Okay. You know, yes, I was checking your website just before we came onto this call, and I saw that Peña is one of your bands that you are really kind of, you know, enjoying at the moment. And it's really nice. I know Jimmy, the percussion player for a very long time, super nice guy. And how was the process, or what was the process for you, you know, to, you know, again, going back to kind of fall in love with that music? Because that's quite interesting, because it's Latin music made in the UK, but it's very unique, very, very nice.
I mean, it's just the process of hearing all this music coming out in different ways. One of the beautiful things about the UK for me, as someone who's been working here all these years, is that there's always this reimagining of music, and there's this real sort of culture that's constantly moving forwards. And more so than anywhere in the world, I feel anyway, it's like there's always, if you know, you can't sleep in this city particularly, and luckily for us, there's always been a wide range of record labels that have, you know, there's just this hunger for music, whether it's artists wanting to make music, or people want to create a DIY venue and just put on events, or whether they want to set up a pirate radio station or an online station. And for example, for me, like one of the labels that's come out in the last few years, one of many labels that's making great music, is On the Corner Records, which has been going for about 4 or 5 years. And Peña, I discovered them through that label. And, you know, Peña, On the Corner have been doing a lot of stuff in Africa, you know, as well, places like Kenya and Uganda. And, you know, mixing music and styles and electronic music, and having a lot of these cultural exchanges. And yeah, another really great, very forward-thinking music platform. And Peña's just one of those things that I found there. I put them on at the Worldwide FM birthday party last year at Earth, and they were fantastic. I mean, in fact, the year before, actually, it was 2 years ago I put them on. But yeah, you know, I think that of course, right now it's very difficult for these groups, you know, because how can they grow and how can they, you know, this combination that I've always loved again about the British scene for me living here is the fact that you can go to clubs and there'll be the club culture, which is really important and is a global export in a way from here. But you've also got this kind of really active live music scene. And so when you can put, for me, when you can put the two things together, it makes for very exciting things. And as a result, look at the festivals that we have here in the UK. There, you know, there's a big movement, of course, of festivals. And so, yeah, a group like Pena, you know, they're a good example of a group that is very Latin music based and is incorporating electronics and a live music aesthetic to put it all together and to be able to go and spend a career touring and doing gigs and festivals. There's enough of a network, or there was, for a group like that to grow naturally. In other words, you didn't have to be an indie band or, you know, just to be able to survive. There were enough worlds, and thank you to Andy Wood and the people, you know, and festivals like La Linea, which are an incredible place for people to discover music from around the world, but also as an encouragement for local bands to be able to play to a fantastically, you know, knowledgeable audience. So, you know, this is what I'm missing more than anything at the moment. I really hope that, you know, we can come out of this situation. I mean, playlists at the moment is funny because, you know, we're talking about playlists and as a record label person, you know, the one thing that we all want to break into is a really, really powerful Spotify playlist, because Spotify has got such a huge monopoly in a way at the moment on people's listening or people's influences. They have such a big part of the pie in terms of, you know, people tuning in, and it's a good thing. Spotify's got, you know, but it's to get on those playlists. You know, who's controlling the playlists? You know, I want to get on Obama's playlist, you know.
Dosco knows them. Dosco knows them.
No, that's the golden question. We ask that all the time. Yeah, who's controlling those playlists, and how do we get to that person or people?
I'm flipping the question because, you know, now y'all see, you know, we know y'all champions, you know, the bands and the sound. Why haven't you signed anyone from the UK yet, Dosco? Is anyone that you've seen that you liked, or you don't think the UK sound is commercial enough for Sony Latin to sell to around the world? Because I don't think you have someone from the UK signed at the moment, do you?
No, I mean, look, I mean, the bulk of our, I want to say, success, or, you know, the records that are working, like you mentioned, are the reggaeton ones, and those are the ones that are signed through our US Latin label in Miami. You know, Miami has been for a number of years now just a hotbed for the crossover urban Latin repertoire, and all of the artists are there, all the producers are there, all of the mainstream media are there. And that's where many of the successful records are coming out of. In addition to that, I mean, you got, you know, hot cities in the Latin region like Bogota and Medellin, where it's just, you know, there's just tons and tons of great music coming through there. I mean, you know, it's not a matter of why, it's a question of when. You know, okay. there's great talent from all over the world.
And you mentioned the festivals, Giles, and you also have your own festival. And how has it been? Obviously, this year you couldn't do it, as we all know. But in terms of you know, development, how has Latin music playing there? And if again another band like Pena that wants to play there, what's the process?
Yeah, well, they play. You know, we have a lot of bands that have come through the festival, particularly the one in Sète in France, which is a 7-day festival. So we have plenty of room for and it's very based around live music, you know, half and half. And many groups have played. A lot of DJs have played there, of course. You know, I was just thinking about people in recent years that played there, but people like Nicolas Cruz was there on the last festival, and you know, people like him and that scene of I don't know where you fit this music into the Latin thing, but it's kind of like they're coming with some you know, a real feeling and a real authentic sound, which is pure and which is really, I can see how it's translating to ears that might not be used to that music, playing sort of electronic cumbia stuff. Another group that, sorry, I'm going off a little bit, but I was just thinking about the groups that were really important to me. You know, one group that was hugely important was the Gotan Project, you know, because they were one of the first groups to mix kind of in where I was playing from. They were mixing like trip hop and tango. And the way they did it was just to see how that could just translate to a completely to an audience that would never have known of tango before that, apart from what they thought of being, you know, the traditional stuff. And so, you know, for me, my festivals, it's always about trying to bring in all these different sounds and surprise people. Because I think people just want to, I think one of the problems these days, and one thing that worries me a little bit about the playlist world, is that everything is in its little box, right? So unless you're in that box, unless you're already tuned into that, you're not going to know what's going on in other boxes. So for me, it's always about how can I get people to listen to stuff that they might not otherwise even come across. So I use my festivals as best as I can to subtly bring people to places like that, new places, whether that's jazz, whether that's music from, you know, some old bands that have just reappeared, like, you know, just out of nowhere, you know, to you know, so whether it's Orchestra Baobab or whether it's Orchestra Polyritmo or whether it's, you know, Elza Suarez, and put them next to sort of electronic artists and DJs. That's really exciting to me because I can actually see people discovering something new, and that's how you open, that's how you open it, you know, and that's what there needs to be more of, because I think once you find what you like, you can find it and you can go search for it forever, and you can go deep in it with the internet, of course, these days. But it's how do you get people into your world? And that's where festivals for me have been an interesting doorway.
And you, Dusko, obviously, you know, you bring a lot of artists, and touring is a massive part of what you do at the moment, or not at the moment, but in general. How do you have any idea how things are gonna pan out for you in the next, in the, let's say, you know, 6 months ahead, you know, things are going back to normal. What's the plan for Sony Latin, especially in the UK, in terms of touring?
You know what? I mean, it's hard to say now because there's just so much uncertainty. You know, as we all know, the live business took a massive hit, and you know there are many artists that are challenged and they're struggling. So you know, one thing that we're trying to do is to help them out the best way that we can, whether it's, you know, giving them the resources, sending them studio equipment, setting up writing sessions. I mean, the beautiful thing that's come out of this pandemic is that there's so much great music that's coming out, that's being released, that's being worked on. You know, everybody's sitting at home, so, and you know, people want to let their creative expression flow. So we're seeing a lot of great music being created. I'm hoping that, you know, things go back to somewhat of a normal in the next, you know, 6 to 8 months. I guess, you know, we're just all waiting for this golden vaccine to come. But, you know, the one of the most beautiful things about music is live. And, you know, I just can't wait for that day to return for artists to be on that stage. It obviously makes them feel great, but as a fan, it feels great to see them live. You know, I mean, I love electronic music and I love listening to playlists. It's great listening at home on your sofa, but there's nothing like a festival or a live show. And, you know, I pray for that day to come soon.
Agreed. And Giles, you know, you have a long relationship with Lou Bega, Little Lou Bega, which now translates into him having a show every week on your radio. Do you think that house music somehow has an easier way to access the mainstream, or well, whatever mainstream we're talking about, this kind of different mainstreams in the UK? Like, it's an easier path to some sort of success in the UK rather than reggaeton or salsa or the type of music? What you sorry, what you view on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Latin and house have always been sort of pretty closely connected in a way, but I think in recent years, the whole drill, grime, trap, reggaeton connection is having a strong sort of impact with definitely the youngest generation. So I'm actually waiting for some. There haven't been that many collaborations yet between like drill and reggaeton.
They are coming, believe me, they are coming.
I'm sure there'll be some interesting ones.
Yeah.
But vis-a-vis Louis, you know, I think that one of the things that I'm really hoping to do in the next year or so is to try and get him to do a new Eureka Soul album or something like that, you know, try and get him back in with Kenny Dope and him and you know, because that record that they made back 20 years ago now, you know, how many records could mix house and hip hop and Eddie Palmieri and Tito Puente and La India and Roy Ayers and Jocelyn Brown and Jazzy Jeff and Dave Valentine, all these people. He managed with Kenny to create a kind of an amazing gateway record for people to sort of discover more about those forms of music. So one of my aims would be either myself or to try and inspire Sony Records to work with Louis, because Louis and Kenny, you know, Louis is a remarkable. I mean, even during this lockdown, I said to Louis, you know, look, you ain't going to be traveling to Europe every week anymore for the next 6 months. So what are you going to do? One thing you've never really done is you've never done a regular radio show. Why don't you do a show every day? And I didn't think he'd take me seriously. And he was like, yeah, man, I'm going to do it. And then I thought, oh yeah, he'll do it for a week and then he'll stop. But he has not stopped, man. He's been on like daily. He's just slowed down now, you know, but he did like around as many shows as me from New York because he's so into it. And he did a Latin show once a week, you know, so he really focused on Fania and his uncle Hector Lavoe and on all the roots. So it's again kind of traditional stuff. Yeah. So it's kind of traditional stuff. But again, you know, an incredibly important person in connecting the music, because he's still got a very, very strong young audience who go and follow him, whether it's in South Africa, whether it's in Naples, wherever, all around the world. Louis, through his house and the way he weaves Latin music within house and techno and electronic music is you know, he's one of the wizards. So yeah, you know, all love to him and to Kenny.
And Dusko, you know, apart from the mainstream reggaeton, what type of music you're getting good feedback from in terms of playlists, YouTube? You know, is salsa having any comeback? Because you have a big catalog of salsa artists as well. Is anything else apart from reggaeton that seems to be, you know, gathering some sort of momentum?
Well, I mean, in the salsa category, you know, I'm very privileged to be working with one of the kings. It's Mark Anthony. You know, we just put out a salsa album earlier this year. We were actually working on a tour marketing plan that was set to go live next month. He was going to be here, you know, early next year to do a bunch of dates, and we've unfortunately had to put that on hold. But the beauty of you know, Spotify and SoundCloud and YouTube and Instagram is that, you know, people are enjoying music from all over the world, and those lines are starting to blur. Like Giles mentioned earlier, you know, we do live in a society, unfortunately, that everyone needs to put music or whatever it is that they're consuming in a box. It has to be in a pop box. It has to be in a reggaeton box. It has to be in an EDM box. But those lines are starting to get blurred, and we're seeing all these new boxes being created. And, you know, I'm really excited about what's happening, in particular with the marriage of Latin sounds, whether, you know, it's a cumbia sound or, you know, sounds coming from Mexico and being merged with electronic music. I mean, like you mentioned earlier, Dengue Dengue Dengue, I'm really excited about them, and I've been working with John Montoya on some really cool remixes and original material, like that electronic sound seasoned with Latin flavor.
So that's the next sound then.
And I would love to work with Nicola Cruz. I mean, I think he's doing some incredible stuff.
He's fantastic, I say. And so yeah, for in terms of Latins, any new artists that that you are championing after Daimé, or anything coming up?
Well, you know, one of the records that one of the benefits has a little bit of shining light as a result of La Linea being postponed was the fact that there's one artist that I reissued a record of his, a guy called Tino Contreras, who's a drummer from Mexico City, and he released a record called Musica Infinitum back in the 70s. And it was a record that I discovered when I was in Japan touring a few years ago, and this record dealer from Fukushima came to me at the DJ set and he gave me some records, or sold me some records, and one of them was this record Musica Infinitum by Tino Contreras. And I remember thinking, this is before Discogs and kind of 15, 20 years ago, right? And this record became a little bit of a sort of secret weapon for me. It was this kind of cosmic jazz, but a little bit subtle funk underneath it, really obscure record. And whenever I'd play it in a club, everyone was just like, what is that? What is that? And they'd be curious about it. Anyway, many years later, I was in Mexico City and I was seeing a friend of mine called Carlos Icaza, who's a record dealer, also has a band called La Redada. And he had, in his apartment, he had 2 copies of this record, Musica Infinitum. I'd never seen any one of this record ever in my travels around the world. So I was like, oh my God, you've got the Tino Contreras record. And he goes, yeah, isn't it amazing? And I said, yeah, it's great. You know, tell me more. He says, well, actually, this record was recorded on this street and Tino's still around and we can meet him tomorrow. So I was like, really? And so we met up with him the next day, and he was an incredibly special person, still is, of course. And we met, and I then suddenly thought, oh, it'd be quite nice to maybe reissue it because, you know, we're all together and it will be good. And I said to Tino, you know, do you mind reissuing it? And he was very happy for me to do that. And then I said, is there anything else you want to do? He says, one thing I really want to do is I want to come to London. I haven't been to London since the 1960s. So finally, for some other really lucky reason, Andy Wood was in town at the time of this when we met with Tino. And I said to Andy, can you get him over? You know, and I explained the whole story about Tino Contreras to Andy, and he was like, yeah. And he arranged everything. And Tino was going to be playing at Earth this year at the age of 96. Anyway, it got postponed. He's going to come back in the new year. But with the spare time he had, he actually made a new record for me. So we are going to release a brand new Tino Contreras record, age 96, on Brownswood, and it was recorded in Mexico City. Or I think it's recorded in Chihuahua, actually, with Carlos Icaza on the production. And it sounds amazing. It's like a Mexican cosmic blues jazz record in a kind of bar that would be frequented by crazy bohemians. So I think you're going to like it. It's really quirky.
Looking forward to hear that. Dusko, any artist that you see coming strong within the next year from your end, apart from the big ones, obviously?
I mean, we recently put out this Carlos Vives album. It's this Afro-Colombian beautiful compilation of tracks called Cumbiana that I just absolutely love. To me, it's a timeless record that you could just listen to over and over again. Quality record. Obviously, Rosalia, who was massive, opened up the Spanish door, for lack of better words, you know, wide open, and is a really exciting flamenco artist from Spain called Lucia Fernanda. We have an exciting young up-and-coming urban artist from Argentina by the name of Nicky Nicole. An amazing singer-songwriter from Colombia by the name of Camilo. Puerto Rican urban act by the name of Raul Alejandro, who I think he's going to make some noise come this year and even next year. And there's obviously, you know, Maluma. There's a new Ozuna record coming. There's just lots of music from the entire Latin Iberian region that's just super exciting for this year.
Great to hear. I think Giles has something there
No,
to show us.
I got this ring. I don't know what it is. Does this ring a bell for you? You mentioned it's a kind of, I think it's Spanish flamenco new, but I don't know who it is. Does this ring a bell?
No,
This,
looks interesting though. I love the cover art.
yeah. Okay. Just wondering because I it's just got this written on it, and I can't really work it out, but it's really good.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's all from me today, guys. You know, again, thank you very much for taking the time and share some of your, you know, anecdotes and experience with everyone. And hopefully things will get better in the next few months, and next year we'll do it together again, but you know, live and direct.
Thank you
So
very
Thank you,
much.
Jose
It's good
Luis.
to
we can
chat,
carry on
guys.
with this. Excellent. Thank you very much, guys. Have a good day.